Yo guys, what's going on? You can see I got the Raptor behind me right here. We're going to be doing a little bit of work to the Raptor today. We're going to be throwing a skid plate on it, a belly skid plate, a rear skid plate. We're going to put a new chain on there because the chain got thrashed on the last ride. If you guys haven't seen that, check it out. And we're also going to be putting on a TMDesignworks chain guard, some real essential stuff that I should have had on there before I even went out for that ride. We're gonna get to doing that right now, but first and foremost, this thing is filthy from the last two rides. So it's about 4 o'clock right now. I got about an hour left of daylight. I want to take advantage of the somewhat warm weather that we're having here on November 8th and power wash this thing off, scrub it down and get it clean before I do some working on it. So let's get to that first. Also, I know a lot of you guys have been inquiring about the Banshee, wondering where the heck that thing is. Stick around till the end of the video. I'll have a couple details on that. And also, if you haven't followed me on Instagram, please check me out. It is Michael Sabo 350. I've been posting up a lot of your guys' quads and your guys' projects, stuff like that. If you're interested in sending in your ride, please send me either an email at michaelsabo350@gmail.com or send me a DM on Instagram. Please be patient. It sometimes takes a couple weeks for me to catch up to all the messages that have been coming in, but please include clear pictures of your dirt bike or your quad. Try to not send them in pixelated, and if you can, include the whole quad or dirt bike in the shot, not ones where it's cut off, unless it's some kind of special image where you're showing off a part on the quad or something like that, but at least include one picture of the full quad or dirt bike. All right, guys, thank you. Alright guys, so you can see how nicely she cleaned up. I didn't go crazy washing this thing. Pressure washed it off and then scrubbed it with soap, and I used some Awesome. The soap I used is Turtle Wax Ice, for you guys wondering, and then of course Awesome. Now some of you guys were complaining, saying that Awesome fades your plastics. I've never had an issue with that. Now I don't let it sit on the plastics for a while either. I wash it off pretty much immediately. And I think when you let chemicals like that sit on the plastics, it can fade them. So as long as you wash them right off, you know, I've never had an issue with it. Been using that stuff for like 10 years. And another question you guys had, where you guys were asking about these front plastics, this radiator cover, and these headlight housings I painted with spray paint. I scuffed them up really good, put a base coat on, and clear coat to keep them nice and protected. Now these things got roosted. These were run out in the coal mines. There is 4.1 hours on them, so not a crazy amount of abuse. But you know, I went through some brush, branches were hitting them, stones were hitting it from guys riding in front of me, stuff like that. So I think they're holding up pretty good so far. Really doesn't look like they took on any damage at all. I think this stuff could probably rub out, but the rest of it looks really good. And the other thing is, I left this sit for 2 weeks dirty. So if it was going to get stained or anything like that, I think it would be stained. Keep in mind it was up at the coal mines. It looks like everything cleaned up really nicely. That's that awesome. I love that stuff. So we're going to get set up here in a second to put our skid plates on, but before we do that, let's check out the parts. Boxes, boxes, boxes. Everybody loves boxes, especially big boxes. All right, so we got a couple things here, not just the skid plate. We got this box. Well, these aren't boxes, but you get the idea. We got 3 of them, including this big box. What's in the big box? I don't know. All right, so let's open up these smaller packages first and see what we got. We're going to put a couple things on today. So start with this eBay one. And you know it's good because it's coming from eBay. And everything sold on eBay is quality, right? Oh, look at that. Yeah, man. Going with TMDesignworks because their stuff has always treated me well. Got the chain slide from them as well. This is a heavy-duty case protector. Definitely a must-have, especially for where I ride in the coal mines. You know, slinging rocks around, breaking chains. Must-have. I should have had this on before I even went for the first ride. But you know what? Better late than never. And I got blue to match the chain slide. So that's going to be an easy thing to install. Really affordable. It was under 50 bucks. Plus it looks really cool. You can get it in black. And I think you can get it in red too. But don't quote me on that. All right. What is in this bag? Yeah, man. Renthal R4. This is made specifically for ATVs. It's a Z-ring chain. It's supposed to be longer lasting than an O-ring chain. And this is made specifically for the Raptor. A lot of you guys were bitching at me, telling me not to get cheap chains and everything. You guys tend to forget this channel is about testing parts on eBay and cheaper things to see if they can hold up to the real thing. And then we get, you know, quality brands and we can see why they cost so much more money. You know, you get what you pay for in most cases. So most likely the case with this, now this chain was about 110 bucks. So it's definitely an expensive item, but for the amount of time that we're going to get out of it, it's definitely worth it in my opinion. So that's going to be a nice add-on, and hopefully we won't screw up our chain again. All right, last but not least, what is in this big box? I think you guys know what it is. Jesus. Sorry guys, I got a little excited there opening these up, but these are really nice. I went with XFR, and the reason I chose them is because I've used them in the past, and I've had pretty much every brand of skid plates, you know, from XFR to Pro Armor, and I think, or not XFR, AC, and I think XFR makes a really good product, and they're really competitively priced. I think all their welds are really nice. They use thick aluminum. Forget the exact spec on it, but they make a really nice product. It's the same thing I have on the Banshee. Was really happy with the way that turned out. Really good fitment. So why not try them again? These two came as a kit. You can see they have all the mounting hardware came with it. Let's put this away before I cut myself. And just a really nice product in my opinion. And I think this is definitely going to keep the underside of my Raptor good and protected. Now, there's two different ways to install skid plates on a quad, at least that I know of. One way is just laying down on the ground, having somebody hold up the plate or putting a jack up underneath while you put the brackets on. And the other way is to actually stand up the quad, which a lot of people say is easier. I've never done it that way because sometimes I have issues with gas leaking. So I'm going to try it that way. So we're going to set that up in a second here, throw a pan down in case I do leak any gas because I did just fill up the tank. So it's kind of topped off. And that way if we get any leakage, it'll run down and drip in the pan. And we'll see if we can seal off that gas cap so that it doesn't leak. And we'll see how much easier it is to put them on that way. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to pull off our vent. Come on. Well, I guess that works. I'm going to plug this off. See if we can prevent gas from leaking out of here. So the simplest thing I could find is this drill bit. Plug up that hole. See if that'll prevent gas from leaking out, but we'll throw down a pan just in case. Alright, so basically what we're going to do here is throw the quad in gear so it doesn't roll back on us, and then lift the quad up onto the back tires and the grab bar. So if you don't have a grab bar in your quad, this method's probably not going to work out for you. You're going to wind up messing your plastics up or screwing up your exhaust tip. So we got it in gear, and then we're going to lift the quad up. And already we're leaking some gas. But that could also just be water, because we just power washed this thing. And I think we're actually good. So you can see this is going to give us really easy access to replace that lower skid plate, the belly skid plate, and we're not going to be crouching down trying to hold that skid plate up. This should be really easy to do. If you're not strong enough to lift the quad up like that, just grab a buddy. Should be easy to do with 2 people. Now I did notice on the front of this skid plate there are 2 mounting bolts in the front. So before we go any further, I'm going to take off these lower bolts and probably the upper bolts and just go ahead and remove the bumper so we can get that skid plate in place. Now I left this one bolt here in place, and I left it loose so I can open this up, and there's just enough room to slip that skid plate in there so it can hang nicely, and then we can throw our other bolts in. Now I'm going to go ahead and put our bolts back in loosely just to keep everything in place. Now these holes aren't lining up quite perfectly in the stock mounting locations for your stock plate. So I'm actually going to wrench this down a little bit because I see a little bit of a gap, and hopefully that'll bring the plate down just enough so that we can get the other bolts in. Alright, so our holes still aren't lined up. So I'm going to try a different method of putting this thing on, and it's not the actual skid plate that the issue relies in. I think it is because my bumper bracket is bent. So what I'm going to do is take these 2 bolts out, remove the 3rd bolt on this bumper and remove it entirely. And we'll see if we can get these 4 holes lined up and use the length of the bolts that came with the kit to pull the plate on, and hopefully it'll push everything into place. We'll see if we can maybe clamp it together and get the holes to line up. And now what we're going to do is, like I said, we'll use the length of these bolts to pull this plate back a little bit to where it lines up, and then we'll see if we can pull the plate in and get everything to line up. But before I put those in, I'm going to put a little bit of blue thread locker on these bolts because skid plates are notorious for vibrating loose, and we don't want that to happen. Alright, so we're going to bring these in a little bit so that we have enough grip with our threads. And it's looking like everything's going to line up. What I'm going to do is throw a C-clamp up here, or maybe a vice grip, just to pull this into place. And then hopefully we can get those bolts in and everything will be lined up. Alright, so I have these 2 little C-clamps that will hopefully help me guide this plate into place so that we can get our bolts in. Let's try a bigger C-clamp. We're not quite lined up, but I will not let this thing beat me. Well, I could have saved myself a lot of trouble. This one big C-clamp made everything line up really nicely. So I'm going to throw the bumper on and throw our bolts in, then we can get to the clamps. Alright, so now we have everything in place. I'm going to leave my C-clamp on there until I have these tightened down all the way. I pulled these bolts in just a little bit, but I didn't tighten them up all the way. So what we're going to do now is put these clamps on. And these are really nice because they're threaded, so you don't have to hold a nut on the other side. So we'll go ahead and put these in place, and then we'll tighten everything down. Alright, now the first one we're going to get is this little T-bracket. And I also went ahead and put a little bit of blue Loctite on these bolts as well. I'm not going to snug this down just yet, just getting it in place. Now this plate isn't sitting quite flush, so I'm going to see if I can give it a little bit of encouragement. You can see it popped right into place. I'll throw this bracket on. Boom, no problem. I really like how that fits in there. So now I'm going to go around and just give this thing a couple taps to make sure that it's sitting nice and flush and we're not relying on the threads of the bolts to pull the plate up against the actual frame. So it looks like it's good and flush. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten down all our bolts. And the last thing I'm going to do is go over the bolts with my hand just to make sure everything's nice and snug and I don't strip anything out. That plate came out really nicely, sitting nice and flush. Managed to get all of the holes to line up, so I don't have to worry about this thing rattling apart because we got our Loctite on there. A little bit of scuffs from the C-clamps. I don't really care about that because this thing's going to be getting scuffed up the first 15 minutes that it goes out. But that fits really nicely. I don't think this thing's going to be rattling around at all. You can see there's two access holes for your oil, external oil tank, and your oil drain bolt right there, which should make for a pretty easy oil change. So this lower skid plate looks like it's going to be a heck of a lot easier. Got the 4 bolts in it. Should be able to pop those out with the zip gun, pop off the old crappy skid plate, and throw the new one on. Well, that is a hell of an improvement over stock. Looks way better, and it's going to be much better protected. This skid for the swing arm went on super easy. I mean, that was literally like a 5-minute job. And I did Loctite these as well. And you also have this little gap here, so you can have access to your grease zerk, which is nice. So overall, super happy with the results of the XFR skid plates. So that went on really well. I'm very happy with the way that turned out. And guys, don't be thinking for a second that because I had to tinker with the belly skid plate to get it to fit on there properly, that that's an issue with XFR or the product itself, because that's just kind of the name of the game when you're putting on aftermarket parts, really with anything, cars, trucks, ATVs and things like that. Aftermarket parts, a lot of times you have to play with them a little bit, sometimes modify them to make them fit, and especially with something like a quad where things get bent even just slightly just from the way we ride them and we beat the crap out of them. A lot of times when you put parts on, they just don't line up perfectly, but you can usually make it fit. Alright, so my external microphone just died, so if the audio sounds a little bit different, that's why. Anyways, let's get to installing this new chain, new case guard, and we'll call it quits after that. So first things first, let's take off this factory case saver and chain guard. going to take this chain off. I've already located the master link right here. Sometimes these can be a little bit tricky. So now that we have the old chain and case saver off, I can show you these new pieces and how they compare. So we have the TMDesignworks right here. Go ahead, open this up. So you can see this isn't a metal case saver like the OEM one. This one is aluminum, but you can see how thin that is as compared to the TMDesignworks. I mean, it's like night and day difference. And this stuff is super durable. It's not going to break away or wear away anytime soon. I've used TMDesignworks before. They're really, really good product. Plus, I'm not going to use the factory cover that was over the chain. This thing right here. I think it looks really cool when you can see the sprocket, as long as it's clean and not rusty. And when you can see this case saver. And it also did come with new mounting hardware, so you don't have to use the Allen bolts that we took off of the factory one. All right, so let's take a look at this $110 chain. Oh man, this must be what it's like when women get jewelry. It's gold. Oh yeah. Damn, this thing is covered in lube. They were not messing around. Looks like it came with 2 master links. This thing is super greased up. Oh my god. I don't know if that's a wax or a chain, some kind of chain lube. Damn, that thing feels solid, nice and tight. And I'm going to compare it to the eBay chain in just a second here. You can see the Renthal is a little bit longer, so I'm probably going to have to cut it down. It came as a 110 link. I don't know how many links this other chain is. That one was cut specifically for the Raptor. I thought the Renthal one was too, but apparently not. But that's no big deal. I'd rather get too much than too little, right? And I noticed, if you look at this, the eBay chain is actually thicker than the Renthal. But this Renthal is super, super tight. I mean, granted, this is a brand new chain out of the box. This one has about 4 hours of ride time on it. But this thing, you know, when a chain can bend laterally like this, as easy as this one is, that's not a good sign. This Renthal one is extremely tight. Definitely seems like a much better quality chain. So I'm happy with that. I'm really excited to put that on there. Now before I go and put this chain on, I want to check my rear carrier bearings and my swing arm bearings, check for any play or something that might not be lined up right, because I think the wear on the chain, that eBay chain, you know, be it as it may, a lower quality chain, I don't think it should have worn out as quickly as it did. It could be the terrain that I was riding on, maybe got smashed by a couple rocks or something because we didn't have good skid plates on there. Nevertheless, I just want to double check everything before I put that expensive chain on there and wind up ruining another chain and being down another $110. So I'm going to throw the back end up on a stand, shake it around, make sure everything's nice and tight. Okay, so everything checks out in the rear end. It still feels nice and tight. So I'm going to go ahead and put my chain on. But before I do that, I'm going to loosen up my carrier bolts and adjust my carrier to the innermost position so that we get the most life out of our chain. Now we're going to get this master link on, make sure all the Z-rings are in place. This grease is so sticky. Look at all this stuff just sticking together. Now I'm going to use this little spacer. This is actually a roller from an older chain, and that's going to go right over these pins. Then I can throw a C-clamp on and clamp this down to bring everything together so I can get my master link on. Wow. Damn. 500-pound test. And now for the easy part, let's put our case saver on. And I did put one little dot of thread lock on these bolts because I don't want to lose my case saver. And that's blue thread lock. You don't want to use anything heavier than that. That came out really nice. I think that looks so much better than what it looked like with the stock pieces. Plus it matches everything else on the quad. Alright, now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, what the hell is going on with the Banshee? So here's what's going on. I'm slowly buying the parts for the Banshee. The parts are really expensive though, but I'm getting quality parts for it. I want to make sure everything's going to be top notch. I have a 4mm, 115mm long rod crank. It's going to be a 4mm stroker, and I have that. I also have 28mm PWK carbs. Now I'll explain in another video why I went with 28mm, and right now I'm in the process of choosing pistons. Pretty sure I already know which ones I'm going to pick, and I'm finding a place to get my cylinders done so that I can get a 4mm port for bottom end and get the cylinders bored out. And then that's pretty much all I need. I also took care of the cool head. I already have that done. So I'm slowly accumulating all the parts that I need, and then we're going to start the build. It's not going to be much longer, guys. I know you've been waiting patiently, and I appreciate y'all, sticking with me and everything. I know some of you guys aren't really into the Raptor videos and whatnot, but that will be coming soon. In the meantime, guys, I do appreciate you watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this content. You want to see more stuff like this. Give me a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you thought of this. And if, for those of you that haven't already, please remember to check out my Instagram. It is MichaelSabo350. And until the next one, guys, have a good weekend, and I'll see you then.